Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and welcome to the Cryoskin webinar. Today we haven't had one since the new year, so happy 2019 to everyone and welcome to those newbies that are coming in on their first live webinar. So today we've got an exciting lineup. We're going to go over the facial, which many times is kind of a forgotten piece and a great kind of highlight for the machine that we can really emphasize. So Delaney will be doing a live demonstration on the facial, and then we'll also take questions around anything about the facial. You guys, I did put you on mute to kind of create a little bit of quiet for the background noise. I will be taking questions in the chat, and then we will at a certain point take you guys off mute in case anybody's having problems with the chat feature and needs to ask a question directly. Then we'll move into the second part. We're going to talk a little bit about the art of the consultation. So we had a great webinar about the art of selling to customers. This we're going to focus just on kind of how to do that consultation. So obviously there's a part of selling with the consultation, but this is a little bit kind of the technique mixed with a little bit of the sell. So we'll talk about some of the top lines there and then again open up for questions there. So, and for everybody, we are recording the session, so we can share it with our community, but you'll be able to share this or go back and rewatch it if you would like to. So I am actually going to turn this over to Delaney.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. So today we're going to be doing the facial on Priscilla, who's actually the newest addition to our Is anybody else called in, or is it just on your computer? It's just on this computer. I already muted it. Hey Molly, I think if you mute your computer. Is Taylor on? No. Oh, that's okay, perfect. Sorry about that, guys. Yes, I know that this facial webinar is long overdue, so I'll just wait until I get the go-ahead that my screen is the main screen. Let me see here. Can you guys hear me okay? Can everybody hear me and see me okay? Yes, okay, perfect. Great, thank you for the response. So meet Priscilla, newest addition to the Cryoskin team. We're really glad to have her. I'm so glad we're doing this facial webinar. It's definitely much overdue. We'll definitely take questions during the second half of the facial, but for the first half, I'm really going to be focusing on just going over specific technique with you guys. So if you guys want to just keep in mind your questions, you can put them in the chat on the second half, and I'll start to answer them then. So first things first, we've already kind of prepped Priscilla a little bit. Of course, it's New York, it's freezing here, so she was wearing a really lovely turtleneck sweater. But as you guys know, and as some of you guys who are a bit newer might not know, for the facial, we actually are starting at the base of the neck. And so anything that's gonna obstruct us from being able to reach that effectively, you wanna make sure that we're adjusting. So we just gave her a little spa wrap that she could just wrap around. You can also give them a sheet, a towel. So you just want to make sure that that neck area can be nice and exposed. Priscilla didn't have any jewelry on today, but another way that you prep the facial is making sure that they're removing any jewelry. So that could be necklaces, earrings, in the lobe piercings. Cartilage piercings tend not to be too much of an issue. Any facial piercings as well will definitely need to come out. If they can't remove the facial piercing, they will need to abstain from the facial until they can come back with it out. So next up, just to sort of finalize the physical preparation, is to add a headband. So this is basically just going to protect Priscilla's hairline. So what I'll do is I'm just going to pull up her hair from underneath, right? And then we've got these ones. They're pretty inexpensive on Amazon. They're just the spa Velcro headbands. So basically, pull all the hair back, and then you'll just Velcro it right at the top here. And then what I like to do is just pull it up so that all of the forehead is exposed, because that's where we really want to get sort of those nice tight results. And then I just make sure, are you comfortable? Your ears are okay? Okay, perfect. And you can adjust from there. Perfect. Yeah, so you always just want to make sure they're comfortable. These can run a little tighter, so definitely make sure that their client is feeling comfy, because this is meant to be a relaxing session. So on your machine, in order to just get yourself set up for the facial, if you're using the 2.0, super simple in F2 where all of your preset programs are, it's the anti-aging facial. If you're using the 3.0, of course, you guys already know that it is personalized by sex. And so depending on if you're doing a facial on a man or on a woman, you would select either the male or female option and then go into the facial. It's a common question, what is the difference between the men and the women's facial setting? There is actually none, a little secret. But basically, because all the other settings are personalized on the 3.0, the facial is technically personalized as well. So the facial on both machines is a 20-minute session. We apply 10 minutes on each side. It's exclusively cold, so there is never any heat applied to the face. And the reason for that is that the facial technically falls under a toning session. So we're really working at addressing microcirculation, collagen and elastin circulation, as well as a variety of other benefits, which I will explain as we go. So first things first, just to prep the skin, you guys are gonna wanna use a fragrance-free makeup remover wipe. We have a link to this on the box drive. We have a full supplies sheet that we link out to, so you guys can access that. But really any fragrance-free wipe is fine. The reason why we say fragrance-free is because a lot of people will tend to have some sensitivities and it can just cause some minor irritations. So we just tend to avoid fragrance in our makeup removing wipes. So for men or for women, you're always gonna want them to come in with a fresh face. So if they're wearing, heavy makeup, if they've just come from work or from an event or, whatever it is, if it's a full face of makeup, you'll probably want them to rinse their face off ahead of time. But even if they don't have time, you can always just wipe off with a makeup removing wipe. Basically, this just helps to prep the skin, make sure there's no lotions, even just natural oils like sweat. We just want to make a completely clean surface before we add the gel and then apply the session. So you could see when I was actually wiping off, I was doing so in the sequence of strokes that I'm gonna ultimately use on the face. So my rule of thumb for the facial, everything is in a lifting motion. We're encouraging the skin in that lifted direction, so we wanna be very consistent there. So that even transfers over to when we apply the gel. And so for the gel, you're gonna take a full pump of gel. So it's gonna look about like that. I like to take the gel in my non-dominant hand, so my left hand, and then I like to take smaller pieces of gel so that I can not just kind of glop it on her. So with the facial, again, you wanna be very delicate. It is a very sensitive area of the body. And so we wanna make sure we're not just smacking gel on the forehead. I always start at the base of the neck for that reason as well, because it kind of eases them into the cold application of the gel. And so you can see it's a pretty even layer. It's on the thinner side, but I do focus more here on the forehead and on the cheek and cheekbone area. Reason being that those areas tend to absorb the gel the quickest because they do have quite thin skin. So once you've applied about that much gel, that's when you're pretty good to go for your first round. Generally on a facial, just depending on the absorbency of the person's skin, you might have to reapply the gel once or twice, but you will be able to determine that just based on the individual. So we will walk through that later on. Of course, you always want to make sure your hands are clean. You want to make sure that you're not wearing any jewelry or watches, anything that can scrape the client. And then what I'll go ahead is I'm going to take the wand in my right hand as we're starting on the right side of the face, and I'm going to go ahead and hit play on the machine. So to get started, it's just a sequential sequence of strokes that you do one at a time over and over again. So we're starting at the very base of the neck, so right at the top of the collarbone. Really important here that we're never going over the throat or the thyroid. So on the neck strokes, you're always starting slightly off center. So we're gonna start here at the base of the neck and we follow with our hand. Then we come to the top of the neck and we follow with the hand. Then we go right flush underneath the jaw, so then you can start in the center, and you're gonna lift all the way up to the temple. I come on top of the chin, and then we're gonna go all the way up into the temple. Right across the lips, so here you can actually deposit right over the lips. It actually helps to bring some more oxygenated blood flow to the lips, so a lot of suppleness there. We got that cheekbone lift. I like to call it the Nike swoosh because that's the shape of the movement. Then on the under eye, really important that we always do this stroke. A lot of people get a little intimidated by this stroke, so I'm just gonna do this a little bit slower. So you're gonna angle the wand outwards, and you're gonna come right on that occipital bone. You're gonna lift up. Then we're gonna come to the center line of the forehead. Gentle, quick strokes, starting right below the brow bone. So we're never going over the eyelid. That skin is way too thin. So just beneath the brow bone for that nice brow lift. Sorry, I'm losing my speech today. So then you just repeat the same sequence of strokes over and over again. And so people ask a couple questions here. So some common questions are, why am I following with my other hand? So the reason for that is that's what's actually producing the effective results of the facial. And so the wand is passing with an application of cold, which is producing vasoconstriction. Your hand then follows, which is producing vasodilation. So the body heat transference from your hand to the client is producing that vasodilation. And so it's actually the alternation of vasoconstriction and vasodilation that's producing increased microcirculation, that's stimulating the collagen and elastin production, that's helping to reduce the appearance of fine lines and wrinkles. So actually fine lines and wrinkles in the face are actually due to the lack of oxygenated blood flow that we get to the face as we age, unfortunately, particularly with women. And so, is it
sure where the orbital path runs with your fingers? It's hard to see just with the wand.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it's a little left.
Basically right here. So I can actually show you guys, just pause the machine real quick and I can go over real quick, right? So we've got stroke at the base of the neck, stroke at the top of the neck, right? Stroke right under the jaw and up into that temple area. Top of the chin, up into the temple, right? Lips and up into the temple. That nice cheekbone lift, right? And then this is what is this sort of tricky stroke, right, that we all have questions about. So you're angling the wand outward, right? You get that edge, you tuck it right under. So think about where, the eye bags are. Think about where you get dark circles. I'll just demonstrate that again because I know, again, it's kind of hard to see. And when I'm following, I'm only for that is I don't want to smudge over her eyelashes. I don't want to get a lot of gel in that area. So we're really just going right under the eye. Then once we get to the forehead, we're going on the forehead, lifting up this way, gentle lifting strokes, and we're ending with that corner of the eye, that sort of crow's feet area.
Great. And before you start the session, there's a couple questions on if the speed matters, and it might be helpful while we're not actually doing the session to show what is too slow and what is too fast.
Of course,
because it is very important.
Absolutely. So the speed of the facial is very important, so it's a really good question. It will vary in terms of tolerance from client to client. I tend to keep it at just a very steady speed. So too slow would be this, right? So that's too slow. So the reason why that would be too slow is because the skin on the face is some of the thinnest skin on the body. And so it is extremely sensitive. If any of you guys have had the facial done before, you guys know that it can be slightly irritating if either the practitioner is applying too much pressure or if they're going too slowly. I would say particularly on the forehead is where speed really becomes really vital. And too fast would be sort of this speed, right? So that's way too fast. You want to make sure that you are doing gentle, sort of steady strokes. So this would be a
big face you're on too.
Right. So you can see it's on the slower side, but it's nice and steady. I'm not pushing down too much. I'm only applying enough pressure that we're seeing that nice lift. And you can see I'm going, you know, at a good enough pace that it's still not going to be irritating for her, but we're still going to see this.
We did do the lips.
A couple other good questions. We'll wait until the other side, and I'll go over some of
Amazing.
those.
So I'm just going to finish out this side. And I'll just
her neck. She does one.
So as I was saying before,
before.
And unfortunately, particularly with women,
Almost 7 on the
as
face,
we
yeah.
age, we use circulation of oxygenated blood to the face, which is why tends to develop in that area specifically. And so what the facial actually does is it brings this rush of oxygenated blood to your face, helps to improve circulation.
Yep. He does it the same way pretty much. And then one extra.
Definitely one of the big pros of the facial. If any of you have had the facial in the past, you guys have definitely sort of seen the wonders that it can do for the face, particularly in clients.
Yeah. And okay, so I watched another video.
As you're going through, when you're doing about the
7 on the face,
minutes of the
on the neck,
one side of the face, you do want to really stick
over
to
the lips.
one stroke
Yeah,
at a
I'll send it to me now again today. I have tomorrow after, so I'll forward it.
Apologies.
It's like 7 on the face and then 4 on the 2 on the forehead.
Your phone in your purse?
Oh
Yeah. So it's a little bit on the edge, yeah, and then angled down. So okay, perfect. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about that, guys. We're still sort of figuring out our technical setup for these webinars. So another important thing on the technique side, and I'll talk a little louder too because it might be my sort of mousy voice. So for technique as well, another important thing that I do see in a lot of beginners with the facial is that they tend to not stay flush to the skin, right? So for example, they tend to lift the wand up instead of really contouring to the skin. Another common mistake is that they won't follow through all the way up into the temple. So basically, you want to think about every stroke on the facial as being half of the letter U. So really think about what the capital letter U looks like, divide that in half, and you really want to do those sort of sweeping contouring strokes, because if we think about the purpose of the facial, it's really to get that sort of natural facelift effect. And that's something that we wouldn't really get as much of if we're just going horizontally. So really important to follow these strokes. If for whatever reason, you have staff members who are not on the webinar today, we do have a recording that will be posted to the box. There is also a facial technique video already on the box if you guys need it for quick reference. So that's something that you guys will always have access to as well. I'll just quickly talk through some contraindications of the facial. So first I'll talk through, some general contraindications that, you would want to know on clients beforehand. So there are some machine-wide contraindications, meaning that they're contraindicated for all treatments on the machine, including the facial. Those include, number 1, severe Raynaud's syndrome. So all my people in the cryotherapy world will already know about this, but severe Raynaud's is contraindicated for all sessions on the machine due to the application of they can't tolerate it. Similarly, severe allergy to cold would be a contraindication for all sessions on the device, including and then also any progressive diseases. So we get a lot of questions about this one. Progressive diseases basically include diseases like MS, ALS, Parkinson's, any kind of neuropathic disease. The reason for that is that when you have nerve endings that are already degenerative, you don't want to apply intensity of heat or intensity of cold to those nerve endings because you run the risk of basically making the deterioration a bit more rapid. And so for that reason, those are a few contraindications that we would avoid for any session on the machine. However, there are also some facial specific contraindications. So these will mostly have to do with cosmetic procedures. So the really mainstream example is Botox and fillers. So if you have a client coming in for a Cryoskin facial, they have to wait a minimum of 30 days if they've had a Botox injection. If they've had fillers injected, they actually will have to wait a minimum of 90 days. The reason for that is, of course, we just don't want to interact with the Botox or the fillers. Botox tends to naturally deteriorate a little bit quicker than fillers. Fillers also can move once they're under the skin, so definitely don't want to just run the risk of having that happen to any clients. So we are a bit more on the cautious side, but it is pretty important. Having said that, we do find that a lot of clients will supplement sort of their Botox routine with the Cryoskin facial because it definitely is a more non-invasive alternative to getting. So it's not something that you have to market against per se, but it is something that you can also offer to your clients who are receiving Botox and fillers, or if you're a med spa and you yourself are getting Botox and fillers, it's also a great tool to enhance that as well.
Just a question, can you reiterate the number of days for fillers?
Yes, so for fillers, it's 90 days, so that would be a 3-month period. For Botox, it is 30 days. Also, just on the contraindications front, there is just, oh yeah, no worries.
Everybody should be muted. This is very strange.
I'm gonna add actually some more.
If you are not muted, please mute yourself. Thank you.
So we've got about 20 seconds left on this cycle. You can see this is where she is getting a little bit more tacky to the touch. If we had more than 10 seconds remaining, I would add more gel at this point, but since we're almost finished, we can just finish out this side. Perfect. So that marks the end of the side. So what I'll just do is I like to just set the wand down. Set the wand down. Before and after, sure, yes. Or the side to side. Perfect. So yeah, if you want to just hold over Priscilla, you guys can see, let me see if I can actually do this for us here. So you guys can see, right, the difference from side to side, especially you see it around the eyes, and as well as in the, you can really see that sort of cheek-bound lift, right? It's a little hard to see at this angle. I'm going to hand it over to Molly.
Sorry, we hear there's still issues. I am going to mute everybody. Unmute everybody. Unmute everybody.
Is that better, you guys? Can you hear okay? Much better? Okay, perfect, great.
Okay, so there's a request to have her sit up to see it.
Sure. Yeah,
close.
so if you want to sit up,
it is
Priscilla.
to be noted, Priscilla has beautiful skin, so this is very...
So we'll just have you face over here. And so you guys can really see in the brow lift, right? We see it a lot around the eyes, as well as in the lips. So you can see the plumpness of the lips on this side versus the other, and the jawline, right? One way as well that you guys, just while you're running sessions, it'll be a little bit hard for us to show this particular angle today. But if you walk down by their feet halfway through a session, you'll see in the cheekbones a prominent sort of lift. All right, perfect. So you can lay back down, Priscilla. Thanks for that. And so we're gonna get into the left side now. One thing that I had mentioned really quickly before I start taking questions is when you're running a facial, let's say somebody comes into you with a particular problem area. So for example, let's say, again, Priscilla has perfect skin, so she doesn't have any concerns here. But let's say somebody has, like me, I'm exhausted all the time, get no sleep, you've got these bags under your eyes. So if somebody comes into you with that concern and they say, I really want you to focus on it, there is some adjustment you can make into your technique. What I would say is for the first 7 to 8 minutes of the side of the face, really just do single strokes. You know, we don't want to over irritate. We want to make sure it's even. We want to make sure we get that nice lift. But then for the last 2 to 3 minutes, what you can start doing is, you know, let's say jaw line is a concern for them, right? So you can do 1 stroke at the base, 1 stroke at the top, 2 strokes on the jaw, or 3 strokes. I would cap it off at 3 strokes, just because any more it's just going to be irritating. So I would do, you know, 2 strokes here, move up, move up, move up, 2 strokes under the eye. You know, if forehead is a main concern for them, people have, yeah, exactly, the anger line. If people have noted that that's a concern for them, which actually Cryoskin facial is great for, we've had people remark it has sort of a Botox forehead effect. Then you can definitely focus there as well. But like I said, just be mindful and really just stick it to that last few minutes on the side.
Great. You can go ahead and start. We've got a couple of great questions, some of which you covered, but I think we just want to kind of make sure it's very clear. So there's a question on nostrils, why we don't do the nostrils.
Good question. So generally nostrils are actually not going to show a lot of signs of age. Another issue is that they are cartilage. And so obviously the cartilage is not going to be affected in the same way that sort of the thin skin on the rest of the face is. So we do avoid the nose just because, again, it's a cartilage.
Great. And then they saw that you had gone over the mouth. Can you talk a little bit about it being okay for the mouth and why? And
yeah, absolutely. So it's totally fine to go over the skin on the lips. It actually is really great sort of plumping mechanism we found. Basically what it does is it brings a really nice rosiness from the oxygenated blood flow. And so it helps to make the lips just appear a bit more supple, not subtle. It also helps with, of course, all of these sessions are going to help with dead skin turnover as well. So particularly in the winter months, especially in colder climates, you're going to find a lot of dead skin, just a lot of rough skin on the lips in particular. So this is really helpful for that. One note that I'll say on the lips as well is when you're following with your hand, it can be a little uncomfortable for people who are receiving the facial. So I like to start my actual following right after the lips, just so they don't feel like you're kind of rubbing your hand over their lips the whole time. You can also see that when I'm applying the gel, I don't actually apply it to the lips. I trust that I'll gather enough by the time I get up there, and that's just more of a comfort level thing with clients.
Great. And a couple other questions coming off of that. Asking if exfoliation of the skin is normal.
Yes, absolutely. So really good question. If any of you guys have seen this, it kind of just looks like grainy, textured, gray pieces. Some people have confused that for the gel in the past. It is actually dead skin cells that are exfoliating off of the outer layer of the skin. So totally normal and very welcomed. So that's well done.
A nice question here on what if somebody has blotchy skin?
Blotchy in terms of like hyperpigmentation or blotchy in terms of just sensitivity?
It wasn't clarified, so maybe cover a little bit on what you would do, on the range.
It really is going to depend on what the blotchiness is stemming from. So if the blotchiness is coming from, sort of an over irritation, might be best to hold off. However, if they mean blotchy in terms of, just hyperpigmented, the Cryoskin can actually help in some situations of hyperpigmentation to even out the skin tone a bit. So in those cases, it could be very helpful. Again, with any of the Cryoskin treatments, my rule of thumb is if you have any concerns about getting body fluid on the wand, don't do it. Wait until it's healed. That goes for any facial concerns as well. So for example, we have the question a lot about acne. The facial can be really helpful for people who are prone to acne, but if they are, experiencing an eruptive breakout, you do want to avoid treating them until that breakout is calmed a bit.
Great. And there's a hot debate on gloves or no gloves.
Ooh.
So some people use gloves.
Really good question. Yes. So actually, I have a very strong opinion on this. And I can weigh in here. So my 100% recommendation is no glove, is no gloves. And the reason why it's actually really simple, as I was talking before about the actual science behind the facial with the vasoconstriction, the vasodilation, if you're using gloves, you lose the body heat transference on the vasodilation, and actually it can inhibit your effectiveness in terms of results. So I would really highly recommend that if you are using gloves at the moment, that you do stop using gloves unless your clients are specifically requesting them, because it actually can inhibit the length and effectiveness of your results.
Great. And a couple clarifying questions. So there was a question one retailer had gotten about how does this differ from just going out in very cold weather, like skiing or something like that?
Such a good question. So, you know, we get this question all the time, right? About, it just feels like an ice cube. Can I just run an ice cube on my face at home? And so the main difference here is the stability and the temperature, right? So because we're not rubbing an ice cube, whenever, if any of you guys have tried to rub an ice cube against your face, you know that it warms very quickly because it's being combined with your skin temperature, right? So whenever you're applying something that's, you know, ice is, you know, 32 degrees is freezing point. But the difference here with the facial is that we're applying it in a very specific way. We're also applying it in a very consistent and stable way. And so there's no way that the wand is going to lose that cold temperature, whereas any other application or even just, you know, being outside can be very irritating. Also, of course, you know, when you're outside, the wind, unfortunately, is not blowing in a very consistent contouring pattern as much as we wish it was. But, you know, we are just in a very controlled way applying the cold. And also again, that vasodilation is a really big part of it. So the following with the hand actually is a huge part of the effectiveness of results there.
A couple follow-up questions on the gloves. And sorry, guys, I'm trying to kind of look back and forth and make sure the audio works. So I'm not following in chat as closely. So on the gloves, it's a bit off subject, but what do you recommend on the body?
No gloves as well. Yeah, okay. So 100% no gloves. So the reason why, I can explain this for the various types of sessions. So for toning, the reason why, again, is that you lose the body heat transference for the vasodilation. So body toning works in the same mechanism as facial toning. For slimming, the reason why I avoid using gloves is because, number one, you do lose, again, the body heat transference on the heat portion of the slimming, but also it makes it much more difficult to produce the friction and tension that is needed to really create those hills of fat during a slimming session, which is, as you guys know, so essential. So yeah, I would really recommend, you know, what some retailers have found success with, and actually what we do at Cryoskin is we do keep, you know, gloves on hand if you do have, you know, the rare client or, you know, even just a few clients who really just, after you've explained to them that it can hinder results, they really just feel more comfortable. Of course, we want to be able to accommodate that, but I really wouldn't volunteer it just from a results standpoint. It's not best practice.
Okay, great. So there's a couple questions coming in on how it works with other treatments. So microdermabrasion, microneedling, some of the radio frequency type of pieces. So if you could just talk a little bit about what's okay, what's not okay, and then if, you know, we can always follow up with documentation.
So that's a really good question. Honestly, for most of those sessions, a 72-hour waiting period is fine. The reason why you don't want to combine them in the same day is that with anything like microneedling, microderm, the plasma sort of injections, plasma microneedling, the reason why is that, of course, that's causing breakage and irritation to the skin. And even if it's on a slight level, you do run a little bit of a risk there. So you do want to wait until the skin is fully healed from that inflammation before you would apply the Cryoskin facial. Also, just more on a consumer level, you want to make sure they're getting the best results from all of their different facial sessions. And so if they really want to go get, you know, the photo facial, for example, you want to give it a good 72 hours before applying the Cryoskin, because then they're going to get the most bang for their buck from both sessions. So we really want to make sure that we're not only, you know, making sure we're being safe, but also just making sure that they're going to get the best bang for their buck on both sides.
And question on how often you can do the facials and our recommendation on that front.
Great question. So technically speaking, you could do the facials every day. Really unnecessary to do so though, because it does take about 72 hours for that collagen and elastin stimulation. So I would say the closest together I would recommend doing facials is every 72 hours. But my general recommendation, my general rule of thumb for facials and for body toning at the same sort of rec is based on age. So if you're treating clients who are under the age of 45, I recommend once per week for the first 5 sessions and then maintain as needed, which generally for people in that age bracket is a bit more infrequent, probably once every few months. For clients that are over the age of 45, just because the collagen and elastin production is already deteriorated. They might have a couple more sort of severe or just pressing concerns. So on that front, I would recommend for clients in that age bracket that they come in once every 3 to 4 days as their schedule allows, and then for the first 5. And then they would probably need to maintain a little bit more frequently, but I always just say maintain as needed because clients will react in ways that will surprise you.
And some questions on throat. So I'm seeing some things I'm asking why you are going over the throat, not going over the throat, etc.
So you should definitely avoid the throat as well as the thyroid. So I'll slow it down when I get down there just so I can really demo this for you guys. But it's really important to stay away from the throat and the thyroid because we don't want to cool the thyroid, we don't want to cool the throat. It can just be disruptive. So it is something that's important to notice. So here you guys can see I always start these strokes off center, right? So when I'm down here, I'm never really going in this throat or thyroid area. I'm always starting slightly off center and coming outward, right? And then when I come right under the jaw, that's fine because you're avoiding the throat and the thyroid, which are sort of a bit lower.
But I think there was a question in the chat if just generally the neck is included in the facial.
Yes.
And the neck is a great area to do because you often see the signs of aging there, and this is really great on that front. Another good question on if a customer comes in that experiences cold sores, generally has cold sores, maybe like one answer would be kind of if they have an open cold sore or they just generally experience them. I think your perspective would be great.
Yes, so if they, generally experience them but are not experiencing one at the moment, that's fine. We can definitely still treat them. Cold sores, as are generally not actually related to the application of cold so much as they are related to sort of other physiological processes. So you shouldn't have to worry too much there. However, like I said before, best practice is obviously if they have any open sores, open wounds, healing parts of any part of the face, you do want to avoid it. So open cold sores, I would say, is a no-no until they fully heal.
Great. And a nice question from Roy. So a lot of his whole body cryo clients really love the facial, and they are doing it on the same day. If that happens, would they do it? Is it better to do it before whole body cryo or after whole body cryo?
So it depends. Does he have a cryo sauna or does he have the whole body?
The whole body cryo. Let me check. Roy, if you heard that, if you can answer that in chat.
So I can just I'll just explain for both. Yeah. So if you guys have the full body chamber, and what I mean by that for people who are not as familiar with cryotherapy, so there are 2 main types of cryotherapy chambers. There's one that's called the cryo sauna, which is where you're in from the neck down. The other is a cryo chamber or whole body cryo, which you are in. You do wear a mask and earmuffs, but you're still in a full chamber. So with the cryo sauna where your head is poking out, totally fine to do it the same day. The only thing I would say is that I would recommend that if you chamber, so just as general practice to avoid it, because I do say to avoid whole body cryotherapy when you are doing body sessions on the Cryoskin, just for just best practices, safety. You are worried about irritation. Having said that, the whole body chambers tend to not get as cold as the cryosaunas do, and they're also not using liquid nitrogen. So that should be fine. Just really make sure that you're gauging their comfort level. I would say, if anything, definitely do the Cryoskin facial after they've done the whole body chamber. That way their skin will have a little bit of time to come back to a normal temperature, and they can leave with the fresh Cryoskin result.
Great. 2 more things to touch on, and then 1 comment.
Okay.
So I'll start with a comment, an interesting point on being able to put this in the training manual, just where the strokes go, which seems like a nice thing to be able to add. There's some confusion around double chin slimming versus the facial. So I think going over that would be great. Yep. And then just so that I don't have to say it again, covering the gel
There's some people that are getting irritation from the gel, wondering if there's other options. If you could talk through that.
Okay. So really quickly, just before I take those questions, I'm just going to demo for you guys the post-facial massage. Really important part of the facial, important part of any toning session. So what you're going to do here is you're going to start at the base of the neck. You're basically going to run over the same strokes that you did with the wand, but just with your hands, right? So it's still gentle. You're applying a little bit of lifting pressure here. It's really relaxing and also just helps, like I said, to just encourage the skin in the right direction. Really just applying that and lifting massage. So that's the reason that I don't do the massage when I'm done with the right side of the face, is because I like to do it like consistent. So as soon as you're done, you can do this for as long or as short as you want. I would say do it for at least a minute, just for best practice. And again, you don't want to obviously go over the throat or the thyroid here either. It can be really irritating. So then once you're done, what you'll do is you're just going to take a makeup removing wipe. You're just going to wipe them off. We've also had some questions about gel removal for the facial. So people have asked if it's okay to use a hot towel. I don't advise doing that. Reason being is that, of course, when we've just applied that sort of lifting element of cold, applying a hot towel would open up the pores that we've just sort of shrinked and closed. And so we do want to be careful there. If you do want to use a towel, I would say just use, you know, a cold towel, which might be a little unpleasant. So I would say probably just sticking to the wipes is generally best practice. So to answer you guys' questions, I know the first question was on gel irritations. So unfortunately, as of now, this is the only gel we are able to use with the machine. It's pretty rare that people will have irritations with it. If they do have an irritation to the facial, just really make sure you're actually adding enough gel. It seems sort of counterintuitive, but a lot of the times when people come away from a facial with, you know, some itchiness or redness, it's generally actually that we use too little gel as opposed to a reaction to the gel itself. But as of now, we only do have the one formulation for the gel, and it is really essential that we only use that. It's the only one that you can use safely with the Cryoskin. So really, really recommend not using any other ones. And what was that other question?
About the confusion on the double chin.
Yes. Okay, great. So the confusion on the double chin. So the double chin is actually a slimming session. So one way you can differentiate this is the double chin session is going to have a heat component. The double chin session is our only abbreviated slimming session. So the full session for double chin is 15 minutes in length. And for the double chin, you would really only be focusing, you can see Priscilla does not have a double chin. The way that I classify a double chin is very specific. So if they walk into your space for your consultation and they have a prominent double chin, meaning they don't have to do this or this to show you the double chin, it is there without them having to manipulate. That's a double chin that you can slim. However, if somebody does come in and they, you know, are pulling on some loose skin, or maybe they think that they have here and they're sort of trying to show it to you, generally that can be addressed really well with the toning facial, because as you see, we're actually lifting up that area. So the main difference is that the facial is a toning session. The double chin does fall under the category of a slimming session. So that's what I would say are the main two differences there.
Great. And a question on, if you repeat it, post, how long after they can put on makeup, if there's any sort of downtime?
Yeah. So there's no downtime with the facial. Priscilla could go straight in the bathroom and put on a full face for an event. We've actually seen that occur in the past. So yeah, no downtime. I would say if people do have more sensitive skin, if they are going to be using the facial for, you know, say a wedding, they should come in for a test sort of facial a week or so before, just to really make sure that they react well to it. We tend not to see real reactions with the facial, but you know, it is just something that you would want to do for anything. You know, they make you do that for eyebrow tinting as well. So it's just something we would want to make sure of. But no downtime. You can put makeup on right away. You could cleanse right away. The only thing I would say is that if you are a spa that also performs facials, if you're rolling in the Cryoskin to a pre-existing facial package, you just want to make sure that you're not doing any kind of exfoliation, any kind of chemical peels, anything that's going to irritate or leave the skin raw or inflamed. You just don't want to do that before or after the Cryoskin facial. You want to keep it very simple in that sense.
Great. Two other questions, and then we might need to take other questions later, and we can follow up with those. Nova threads, how long after? And
yeah, I'm not familiar with Nova threads, so I'll have to get back to you guys on that one. We'll make a note of who asked that question. I would have to do some research into that.
And just repeating on how often they can do it, and the results how long the results last, and what they can expect if they do multiple facials. Does that last longer?
So the facial definitely has a cumulative effect. So I really would recommend that people looking to address specific issues don't just come in for a one-off. Of course, if they have an event or they're going to a dinner or, whatever it is, and they want, to come in for a one-off, that's fine. But if they are looking to address specific issues, they really should do the full 5-pack. So I'll repeat again, under 45 years old, you want to come in once a week for the first 5 and then maintain as needed. Over 45 years old, you want to do once every 3 to 4 days for the first 5 sessions and then maintain as needed. With one facial, results do last a few weeks, so you do see real significant results there that do last. For 2 sessions, it basically will just build depending on how many sessions they decide to do. So based on their age bracket, the closer they can stick to my recommended timing, the better results they're going to see and the longer they're going to see them. So yeah, that's what it is.
Great. Goes back.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. Do you want me to give it back to you? I think I can do it. Here. Oh, maybe not. Yes.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much. Okay, I'm gonna flip over and I'm going to talk a little bit about consultations. We have about 10 minutes left, so I'll make sure to share these materials after, and we can always do some other follow-up as well. Just one second. I can see my note for my husband. Okay. Let me know if the audio is okay, and maybe Delaney, you can let me know. Okay, so a little bit about the art of the consultation. So this is kind of usually the consultation is being done by your real Cryoskin expert. So somebody like a Delaney that knows the ins and outs, that can really talk to the clients about what they can achieve, look at their body, do the grip test, etc. So I'm gonna talk about the in-person free consultation. So this is somebody that you're trying to get to buy a package, they're coming in for a free consultation, they haven't yet purchased. So part 1 is really about getting to know them, asking and listening, right? So before you jump into, here's everything about Cryoskin, and give them all the information, we really recommend asking first, what are your goals? What are you looking to achieve with your body? What problem areas are you looking to address? And then just stopping and listening. The second piece to go into is their lifestyle. What do you do now for diet and fitness? What kind of water intake do you do? So you get a sense for kind of how well this might work for them, what other things are they doing, and how you could look at kind of what expectations they can get from the Cryoskin and making sure that matches up. And then the final part on listening and asking is the body. So getting them onto the table and showing the areas that they are looking to address and doing that grip test that you guys all learned about in your trainings. Then the second part is more on you. So that first part is really kind of learning and listening. The second part is where you're going to go into the how, the who, the why, and the what. So how does Cryoskin work? So you'll talk about the science focused on the treatment that they'd be recommended. So most of the time this is going to be slimming, particularly in a free consultation. But if somebody's too skinny for slimming and you're just talking about the body toning, you would focus it in on the body toning. But most of the time this is going to be talking a little bit about how slimming works, the science behind it, you know, and that kind of thing. So really having your elevator pitch down well there. The second piece is who Cryoskin is most effective for. So obviously if this is a woman, let's say it's myself, in her 40s, you aren't going to talk about whether this works on men, but you would talk about, okay, this works really well on moms that are kind of getting back into shape. It does work well for people in your BMI, and you would talk through a little about that. You would also at this time likely go through the contraindications and make sure that there's nothing that would prohibit that person from being able to do the treatments that you want. Then why? So it's important to talk about the pre and the post care and really partnering with the client on the process. So this is a good time to go through pre and post care instructions and link that back to why it matters. So why the science works, why you're doing those pre and post care, the results difference. You can talk about how in clinical studies, if you don't change anything with diet and fitness, you lose 1 inch to 2 inches in the course of the sessions. If you do the diet and fitness, you're seeing anywhere up to 6 inches lost, right? So really partnering with them there and talking about the difference that their own personal care can make is really important. And then the what. This is where you get into a little of the sell. This other stuff is really, you just think of yourself as your educator's voice, and you know, you're helping them out as a friend and talking to them about what might work. Your what, you want to use that same voice, but you want to recommend what you think could work for their body and match it to the listening that you did on the upfront of what's really important to them. So I'm recommending to you, Molly, a 5-course treatment. You talked about wanting to get back in shape for your brother's wedding. I think we can make some inroads, really optimizing between slimming and toning and get you there over the course of the next 5 to 10 weeks. One of the things that works really well here is looking at what they could expect from the results. So the before and afters, a lot of our top retailers will actually just print out some of those before and afters so that you can show some of the results that they can expect. This works in 2 ways. It really helps people to see the great results. It also measures their expectations. So sometimes there'll be people that they would frankly have to lose a rib to get any skinnier. So you're showing that this isn't a great, you know, treatment for them. Also on something like a double chin, you can see how that results and what it's really there, right? So people can start kind of matching what they would hope to achieve with the Cryoskin. You can also, of course, do this with words and talking through it, but I do see some of those before and afters and really having that visual. People are, you know, very visual. I'm sure everybody here can relate to that, and having that there can really be helpful. Part 3, close and start. So this is where you're going to review the pricing. So tailor the pricing that you're talking about to the recommendation. Obviously this is retailer's choice as long as you're above the price minimums. But one of the things we've seen work really well is if you're doing a free consultation and they buy a package that day of the free consultation, offer them that first session for free. So the way that works is it becomes a 6 session for the price of 5. So the overall 5-pack is generally $1,500. When people feel like they're getting that something for free, they get excited. It gets them, you know, really able to kind of convert from that excitement coming out of the free consultation to buying the package. So it's one thing to consider. Of course, not mandated. You guys can look at how and what works best for you guys. But it's a great way to kind of get people committed to the results. And then close, we have some great ideas that are by people that are much more masterful in sales from our top retailers on our webinar on selling to customers. So that's a great one on if you're looking to really kind of fine tune your selling technique to customers and get some of those closing techniques down. But this is kind of the close of the consultation. And then ideally starting the session. Many people that do free consultations will leave time to actually go right into the session. Obviously, if you've got a very booked calendar and this is tough, some retailers won't do this, but the ability to jump right from the excitement of the free consultation into doing the results, of course, only if they've done the pre-care instructions. We wouldn't want them to jump in. They haven't done the no carbs in the last 2 hours and not get results. But if you can have the ability to start the session, that can be great. If not, booking them in, you know, making sure you're matching the scheduling and getting them excited to get going. We do have some examples of, we've been doing the Facebook testing program, and we do have some examples from our call center on intro scripts on what to say when people initially express interest. As I send this out, I'm going to send out some of those example scripts. They're pretty bare bones and we will add to those, but it is helpful for those of you guys that are really kind of creating some sort of lead generation, be that through your email programs, be that through Facebook, where you're getting people interested, but then need to call them, text them, email them. There's some nice ideas on how to really catch them and do that and provide enough information without overwhelming them. I know that was very quick on the consultation side. We're going to do a couple live consultations. What we're going to do is film those instead and place them into the box folders. I also would love to see your guys' own consultations yourself. So if you guys are doing some consultations or have some kind of staff that you could do, how you do a mock consultation, it's something that a lot of our top retailers have a je ne sais quoi, a little secret sauce on. So seeing some of those would be great. And then of course, we'd love to be able to share some of those top ones. So please feel free to send those along to us, and we'll feature the best ones. Great. We've got about 3 minutes left, and I'm very wary you guys have lots and lots of great questions. We will try and field as many as possible right now. And then any that we don't, we'll always kind of work to follow up with you guys and answer either individually or in follow-up materials that we send out. Any questions, if you can throw those into chat. I'm a little wary of taking you guys all off mute because of our audio problems we've had. Great, and glad to see this has been helpful. Zach, I will follow up with you on that. And again, for everybody, if this is your first webinar and you did find this helpful, we have done these on other subjects that a lot of people have found helpful. Delaney, as you can tell, is great at doing the technique, and sometimes it's nice, even if you are an expert, to kind of take a step back and take a look at one of these. And we'll take it from there. We also do appreciate you guys' feedback on what else is useful. All of our webinars have really come from the next suggestion. So please feel free to suggest that to us. And yes, these are always uploaded into Box. We send it out in the weekly email, the link, but pro tip, it will probably be in there within 24 hours. So you can always review, you can always let anybody else on your team know that it's there, and we can add other people from your team members to Box if they're crucial parts of the team. Wonderful. Thank you guys so much for joining. We are going to put 2 minutes back on everybody's calendars, and thanks again. Have a great rest of your January.